Hi everyone and welcome back to the Shack, and in this episode I'm feeling like I'm very late to the party as I've only just received this Kung Fu Flash cartridge in the post, having ordered it a couple of months ago, and even then it wasn't exactly new, but it is new to me and maybe it's new to you too, so it's worth taking a look at. Especially in light of my previous video about the Pi1541 and Epic's Fastload cartridge, which I postulated might in fact be the only cartridge you may ever need for the C64. Opinions of course varied on that, and I'm aware that the Ultimate 64 cartridge has many more features, so that will be making its way to the channel at some point, just for completeness. But for now, let's focus on what this cartridge is, its main features, what it can and what it can't do, and of course how easy and intuitive it is to use. I always love reviewing these things. It gives me an opportunity to play some games and call it work. Right, let's crack on. So this cartridge was designed by Kim Jorgensen, who also created the TapeCartSD, which I reviewed back at the start of the year, and it's a very low cost cartridge emulator that plugs into the cassette port of the C64 and is a doddle to use. There's a link to the video on the screen if you want to find out more about that. But this creation, the Kung Fu Flash, was first released way back in December 2019, making it practically retro in its own right. Well, not quite, but that does mean this cartridge is now tried and tested, and hopefully any early kinks have been ironed out. This revision, version 2, came out in May 2020, and there have been a number of firmware updates since then, with the latest being 1.23 at the time of producing this video. Each release adds either new cartridge types, patches for specific games to allow them to work with the unit, and of course general bug fix and stability updates. Being open source, there are many places selling versions of this unit, and prices can vary wildly from fully boxed retail products down to buying all the bits and building it yourself. If you have the option of printing your own case but don't have the time or inclination to build your own PCB, you can pick up the fully populated and ready to go board from eBay for around £25, which is what I did, and used my Creality CR10S to print this case from Thingiverse. Quite pleased with that, and the board fits really nicely into it. Taking a look at the PCB itself, we can see we have a micro SD card up here, and there are 3 buttons to interact with. No screen on this device. The buttons are special, which is reserved for interactive cartridges, freezers, action replay type cartridges and the like. The menu button, which takes you back into the on-screen launcher program, and reset, which resets the cartridge and the C64. There's also a USB port on the side, which allows you to connect the cartridge to your PC to transfer files back and forth, which is nice and stops a lot of popping the SD card in and out and reduces wear and tear and accidental damage. Now, the author describes this as a software-defined cartridge, meaning that it essentially is software running on this ARM chip that is emulating the various cartridge hardware types. And although 90% plus of popular games and applications will work, it's important to note that the author doesn't guarantee everything will work. The Kung Fu Flash supports a large variety of cartridge types and supports the following file types to contain the software. So we have CRT or C64 cartridges. As long as the cartridge type is on the supported list, it should work fine. D64, D71 and D81 disk images. Important to note there's no disk swapping capability and also no fast loading, and any disk software that requires direct hardware access, well, that won't work either. PRG and P00 program files, and UPD, which is a model specific firmware update for this unit. Updating that firmware is a simple matter of putting the latest update file on the SD card and then selecting it in the launcher. If your firmware needs updating, it just cracks on and does its thing. In use, you pop some supported files on the SD card and switch the machine on to get a launcher program. Selecting a CRT file, we see that the CRT cartridge file is flashed to the onboard memory of this cartridge, and then the C64 runs that software as if it were the cartridge itself. Why is that good? Well, the Kung Fu Flash cartridge retains what was last flashed into its memory, and therefore powering the machine down and powering back on again launches the cartridge stored in the flash memory straight away, with no need to use the launcher. That means you've got your favourite switch on and play game or application to hand at all times until you want to swap it with another. Very nice touch. The inbuilt memory of this cartridge is enough to support the big cartridges like Terminator 2, so you're not limited in that respect. At any time you can press the menu button to go back to the launcher and choose another title to flash to cartridge memory. The only thing to be wary about here, and I've no idea if it's really a problem or not, and don't want to try it in case it is, but I'm thinking that you don't want to be turning your machine off whilst a cartridge file is being flashed to memory. I'm thinking that could lead to brickage. If anyone out there has unfortunately been able to confirm that either way, it will stop me ruining my cartridge by testing it. So let's have a look at this in action. And for those of you that clocked the strip poker and thought I might start with that, well, shame on you. This isn't that sort of a channel. I've replaced that unwholesome gratuitous sex with Final Fight for some unwholesome gratuitous violence instead. Now, before you get too excited about that unwholesome gratuitous violence, remember that this is a disk image and the Kung Fu Flash has no fast loader support. So
several days later.
Yeah, bored of that, so let's load up this really small disk game instead, just to show it works. And indeed it does, but as I mentioned earlier, you're not really going to want to be using this for disk images. That's where the Pi1541 comes in. So let's load up this Music Maker cartridge instead, and if you've noticed the new music at the end of the show and thought, I wonder who made that, well, wonder no more. Skill level infinite! Well, anyway, maybe not, but you get the idea, the cartridge worked. Let's load up a larger game so we can see the flashing process in action. Blimey, that was still pretty quick, wasn't it? And who are we going to call if there's a ghost related incident? Of course, yes, how silly of me. So let's try one last cartridge, The Last Ninja, which is a fairly hefty game and so should take a little while to flash, and indeed it does. Everything I've thrown at this has worked, but as I mentioned earlier, the author does say that some things probably won't. If you know of any, pop a note in the comments, please. So, do I see myself adding this to my regular hardware lineup, considering that I've been perfectly happy with the Pi1541 and Epix combo up to now? Well, oddly, yes, I do think I'll use this cartridge at times. In essence, it's an extremely complementary product to the Pi1541, as this does cartridges really well, but doesn't really do disk stuff, unless you want the very basics, and the Pi1541 is an excellent disk drive replacement, but can't retain a cartridge in memory to just switch on and play. Also, if you've got an actual disk drive plugged into the serial port, this gives you access to a world of cartridges, action replay, ripping, copying, transferring, manipulating, etc. all at your fingertips. As I mentioned at the start, I really do need to get my hands on an Ultimate 2 cartridge, as that has some amazing features way beyond that of purely cartridge and disk emulation. As soon as one makes its way to the shack, a review will follow. In the meantime, if money is no object, I'd go for the Ultimate 2 Plus just for the advertised extra features alone. If, however, like me, you're on a budget, you could do much worse than getting one of these Kung Fu Flash cartridges. It does what it says on the tin. It flashes cartridges Kung Fu style. Combine this with the Pi1541 and you've got pretty much everything covered. As always, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to the channel and hit the bell for notifications of new content. If you'd like to support the channel, there are a few ways you can do this. You can become a patron of the channel, or you can simply buy us a coffee. Links to both are on the header on the main page, and both help us to continue to get cool new stuff to test and share with you. Or if you have something to donate to the channel, please get in touch via email. Please do leave your comments below, as we always love to read them. And until next time in the shack, it's goodbye from me.